You were brave once. Don't let that be the end of your story. You can't live off the echoes of yesterday's courage because, newsflash, life doesn't care who you were. It only asks, who are you now? You can see the applause fades. The milestones blur. And what once felt like a ceiling, that's now your floor, your normal, your baseline. It's not failure. It's not regression. It's just life. Calling for your next evolution, asking for that next version of you. And the truth is, you can't answer tomorrow's questions with yesterday's answers. As brave and courageous and remarkable as they were, you've grown too much, seen too much, you've become too much. So now what? Well, I've been thinking about it lately. Out here in the desert, surrounded by silence and space, I find myself reflecting on moments that shaped me. Moments that demanded everything. At least everything I had at the time. Leaving behind safety for the unknown, heart pounding, hands shaking, but walking away. Not knowing what would happen, but just the feeling that something had to. Or speaking my truth when silence would have been easier. The moment I stood tall when I had every reason to fold. Those were everything to me at the time. Those were battles that built my backbone, and yeah, you bet I'm proud of them. But here's what I've come to understand. If I only celebrate who I was, I'll never become who I'm supposed to be. I don't want to be a monument to my past. I want to be a movement towards my future. And so here I sit. Not because I'm done, but because I'm beginning. Reflection is powerful, but I think only if it fuels motion. Because you can reminisce or you can rise, but you can't do both forever. So let me ask you something. What did you once do that scared the hell out of you? What moment did you walk through the fire? Speak up when your voice shook. Leap when there was no net. That version of you, they didn't wait for perfect. Didn't ask permission, just moved anyway. So, what are you waiting for now? Why are you holding on to yesterday's risk as though it bought you a lifetime exemption from discomfort? It just doesn't work like that. Life's not impressed by what you did last year. It's not clapping for last month's bravery, last year's courage. It's staring at you now, asking what's next. And maybe that's what courage really is. Maybe that's all it is. Not a one-time act, but a daily decision to let go of who you were. To make room for who you can be now. To build again, risk again, believe again. And I get it, right? Maybe you're tired. Maybe you thought you were past the hard part. But what if the hard part is the best part? What if this next climb is the one that reveals who you really are? I don't think you came this far to pause. I think you came this far to break through. So no, don't hang your hat on previous courage. Hang it on the hook of possibility. The world doesn't need a 2020 version of you. It needs this version, right here, now. The one who's seen more, felt more, survived more. Every single day up to now, to be exact. The version of you with scars and stories and fire still left to give. Remember, you were brave once. You can be brave again. Perhaps it's time to prove it. When our backs are against the wall, we're forced to become more. When the clock is ticking, we are tasked with finding answers that hide among us. It's in the darkness we find light, and while lost, we find ourselves. The paradox of life is that from our pain comes our purpose, our evolution, and our greatness. I love thinking back to about 2014, making my way around Boston, having just quit my job, essentially purposeless, clinging to a YouTube channel and a podcast idea that I would name Your World Within. And why? Why do I think back? Why does this mean everything to me? Well, because at the time, I knew nothing. I understood nothing. Nothing about speaking or media, audio, video, nothing about running a business. But more importantly, I knew very little about life and what's truly required to progress in a world with infinite moving parts. I didn't know that my lack of understanding is what made everything feel overwhelming and complex, and that it was up to me to simplify. I didn't know the extent to which I'd have to befriend failure. And that was the most eye-opening realization. Because when you gravitate towards a risk-free existence and you box yourself in, as I had for so long, of course you don't get the upside, but you also don't fail as dramatically either. Life was a simple game of cause and effect. Do work, get result, not much room for more than that. And so stepping outside that box in the way that I did changed some rules. I learned some things. First, you can spend time on something, you can exhaust energy on something, and get nothing in the short term for your efforts. And I mean nothing. Unless you count getting your pride stomped on. Unless you count your friends disappearing when you need them most. Unless you count self-doubt and a constant worry about not amounting to anything. I mean, these are very raw, very real human emotions. They tend to arise when we start something new, but in them is also the power. This is where the light bulb turns on and the path emerges. It's where I learned that we only get what we want when we endure what we don't. And what a foreign concept when you think about it, right? It's like, Eddie, take this mic. Go stand in front of this audience and pour your heart out. Your knees are shaking, chest is pounding, but dude, trust me, it'll be good for you. And funny enough, it was. It was because the fear in my stomach became the indicator that something new, something exciting, something more was around the corner. Like Pavlov's dog hearing that bell. Anytime the fear kicked in, I could feel myself getting closer to something meaningful, to a higher version of myself. The pain is an invite. The sheer terror, and let's face it, that's what it feels like sometimes, it's an upgrade. Disguised as the monster that you think you should be running from. When it is, as I recently mentioned, the adversary you should befriend. We have to change our relationship with discomfort, because our initial understanding, the one that comes stock in our minds, is never sufficient to build anything of significance. Its default setting is to preserve the now, not expand it. And so just like those stock speakers that came in my 1999 Ford F-150 when I was in my early 20s, let's rip it out. Let's customize. Let's upgrade the quality of the sound we hear and the things we say to ourselves. What an advantage it is to know that the hard things are what make us level up. To find that awareness. What a blessing that when life's difficulty startles and scatters the masses, you could be the one that remains, standing tall, seeking out the advantage amidst the commotion. Every little act of courage becomes more and more meaningful, powerful. But we must lose ourselves to find ourselves. We must embrace our fears if we are to become courageous. We must fail in order to succeed. And sure, sometimes the price seems steep. But I promise, not going costs more. Wishing costs more. If onlys cost more. So maybe for you it isn't a YouTube channel or a speaking career. Maybe it's something totally different. But it is something. And should you bring yourself to pursue that which your heart pulls you to pursue, you'll have those moments of defeat, where you're mad at yourself for leaving the comfort and safety of your previous world. You'll have times where you have no idea what to do, where you feel alone or stuck or unsure. The difference will be whether you see this as the invite you've been waiting for or the reason to turn around and settle for less. That's the question. How do you internalize all that emotion that will feel like it is consuming you? I couldn't believe how strong that temptation was to go back, nagging at me every day. Just come off the edge. Just be comfortable again. But as my old coach would say in college, when we're doing wall sits or something physically taxing, 15 seconds. You can do anything for 15 seconds. And isn't life just a culmination of 15-second windows? It's compartmentalizing the process. It's turning the difficult into the advantageous. You have the ability to not think like everyone else. You have it within you to rewire your previous conceptions of the world, to see darkness not as your reason to hide from conjured up monsters, but as your invitation to become the light. Remember that the best way to be more is to have the courage to put your back against the wall. And you won't want to in the moment. There will never be a perfect time. But committing to that vulnerability will release from within you the power, the strength, the greatness that has been for so long tucked away. By moving into the chaos, you are simultaneously creating the calm you always dreamed of. You're realizing the possibility that just needed the door left ajar to make its way into your world. Do you believe? Do you believe that this world is yours? That space and that time are trustworthy passengers on your journey? Do you believe in the unseen? That what we know and what we don't, what's possible and impossible, they're not so different. They just need to be connected. Do you believe that one person can be the difference? That courage is a choice, and that if you have something to say, not saying it is a tragedy? Do you believe in your resilience? That when your back is against the wall, that when all seems lost, when everything is in doubt, we are presented an opportunity to evolve into something more? Do you believe that there is a way? That when the road ends, there is another path? That when you can't go around, you can go through. And when you can't go through, you can go over. Do you believe that the darkness before you is merely the absence of light? A light waiting to be created, brought to life? That nothing is meant to be, any void can be filled, and you are in fact the architect of that light. See, what you have before you, it's no easy path. It's not the simple one, or perhaps even the one you asked for, but it is in all respects yours. It may seem larger than you. Its uncertainties may make you question your decisions. Its complexity may prompt memories of simpler days, but none of this lasts. Because over your shoulder, what you've left behind will always tell a different story. Always remind you that you could have stayed home. You could have remained and accepted things as they were, dreamt about what might be. But rather than wait for time to expire and take your power into the ground like most ultimately do, you took to the sky. You let the stars, the infinite world beyond the horizon guide you, and as much as you decided to be here, this path chose you. It chose you to make something new where there was once nothing. To exchange breath for the first time with an atmosphere conducive to your greatness. You did not know it was there the whole time, and how could you have? It wasn't visible to any naked eye. It wasn't accessible to the common man, but it's here now because you said yes. So please hold on to that courage, because it's everything. The difference between accepting the now and rewriting history is belief. Belief in a tomorrow that is different from today. And as you make your way into this darkness, be proud. As you enter that which most wouldn't dare to confront, hold your head high when you falter, stumble, when the ground under you begins to shake. Believe not only in your pursuit, but in your resilience. Life remains cold and dark until we find the courage to do something about it. Until we step out of the shadows. See, you aren't escaping the emptiness you're leaving behind. No, you are the one who will give that emptiness life. The maker of a new universe. You are the architect of light. When you look at erosion, like, say, dunes on a beach, what you see is something giving itself away little by little, deteriorating. Sure, there will be events that expedite the process, but generally speaking, it's lost a little bit at a time, day by day, right in front of our eyes. Until the time comes when we realize that what we have is no longer recognizable. It's sort of redefined. And I think in a lot of ways, we find ourselves in a similar situation. The concessions we allow every day slowly redefine who we are. And it doesn't seem like much. That's the thing, it never does. Quietly detaching from what you believe, taking on an identity that doesn't quite align with who you are, doing things, being places that causes something in your gut to protest, toning down the color in your life so that you blend in. Right? These are not epic, monumental decisions. It's the drawn-out erosion of what makes you who you are. It's the chipping away of what makes you spectacular. See, the idea that now isn't permanent, so I'll just suck it up now. What's the big deal? I'll just settle for now. Let me tell you, if that's your rationale, you're forgetting how easily tomorrow becomes never and now becomes forever. We operate under an illusion that things will become easier, that change will be less strenuous down the road. We'll make things right, get back on track, be happy then. But the harsh reality is that things don't get easier than they are at the present moment. It's quite the opposite. And to disregard or ignore this is to let yourself wither away at the hands of procrastination. If you're planning to wait for that, get comfortable. And see, conceding day in and day out, it alters your understanding of who you are and what you're capable of. Our actions reinforce our beliefs. Imagine a straight line, a simple straight line drawn on a piece of paper, right? You're in the middle. And on one end is who you are, in your heart, in your soul, and on the other end is everything you're not. Every time you sacrifice your principle, your beliefs, every time you say, that's not me, but fine, that's not where I want to be, but okay, it's only temporary, you take a little step toward what you're not. And another step, and one day you look in the mirror and you have no clue who's looking back at you. Because you've conceded one small decision at a time, you've given away your sense of purpose. Sure, the situation is difficult, but the best things in life are the things that are not easy. You have to fight for those things. You have to stand up in the face of struggle, adversity, the narrative that others want to write for you. We stay within guidelines because we think the outside is scary. No, what's inside is scary. What's outside is what you need. And when you stop banking on the anticipated miracles of tomorrow and manage the reality of today, you succeed. It's life's greatest test. Are you brave enough to be you? Are you strong enough to fight back when you're tempted to hide, to blend in? Every time you summon the courage to stay true to yourself, it gets easier. The difficulty lessens. You become free of the mental chains you've placed around your ankles. There are certain things in life worthy of compromise. But your identity, your journey, what makes you feel alive, that is sacred ground. That is worth defending until your last breath. No one can take that because it's yours. And when you look back on your life and the amazing people in it, a life lived fully will always supersede marching through your days wearing a mask and following someone else's agenda. It's your life. It's your gift. Live it. Stop apologizing. Stop apologizing for who you are, what you believe, and how you see the world. Stop apologizing for your failures. They lift you up. They push you to be more. Stop apologizing for being different, unusual, or unique. There's a saying that if you are lucky enough to be different, don't ever change. Embrace that. Hold it. Stop apologizing for taking a path less traveled, for breaking away from the pack. It's not an insufficiency. It doesn't mean you couldn't go their way. It means you have the courage to be yourself in a world trying to make you someone else. Stop apologizing for words that don't align with someone else's ideology or worldview. Your job isn't to appease or conform. It's to grab hold of what lights a fire in you and use it to brighten the world around you. Stop apologizing for your dreams. It's okay to not be content where you are. It's okay to want to grow, to become more. The roots planting them to the ground, they are not yours. And why waste the opportunity beyond the horizon of your current existence? See, having the courage of your convictions is like unlocking your mind. Realizing that, yeah, you have the key and you've had it all along. No one else gets to set your parameters. They don't get to tell you what's right or what to believe. The people around you are not moral arbiters. They're not protectors of truth. Remember that. Remember that no one knows better than you what's best for you. That's why there's power in intuition, in following your beliefs, your strengths, in doing what makes you happy, relentlessly pursuing what makes you feel alive. The thing about dreams, ideas, potential, they're always meaningless until they're not. See, everything is crazy until it exists. So protect it. Don't bow down to pressures of now simply because you have not yet built tomorrow. You will. If you want it, you will. Some messages, they are incredibly simple, and this, my friends, is one of those. You have everything you need to become who you want to be. Right now, as you listen to this in real time, you don't need approval or permission or acceptance. You don't need to belong or be told it's normal. You simply need to start, to know that you will pick yourself up when you fall and keep going. Not apologize, but continue placing one foot in front of the other. Not look externally for a will to carry on that only exists within you. See, the second you begin rewriting the rules, changing the game, you put yourself in position to emerge victorious. There is no finer a line than the one that separates failure and success. When you think about how a fraction of a second, an unforeseen variable, a slight miscalculation can ultimately mean the wrong result. The one you didn't want, that dreaded word, failure. And when we see failure, we think, well, back to the drawing board. That wasn't it. We simply missed the mark. But what I'd love to point out is how so much of the time this isn't the case. Right? We erroneously judge our approach based on one outcome, one swing of the axe. The tree doesn't fall, so we blame ourselves and doubt the process. And it's like, I get it. No one wants to continuously jam a square peg into a round hole. It's the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about giving yourself a chance, not walking by the thing you need. And far too often, we tear it down to start over because we assume the approach is wrong when sometimes it's not the approach. Sometimes things don't work at first. Some things take a while. Sometimes it's just reps. And I started thinking about this a while ago. Last year, I saw this random statistic kind of halfway through the NFL season that said fourth down on 4th and 1, 4th and short, coaches decided to go for it 53% of the time. I think it was. That number might be slightly off, but right around there. The idea is that there's risk involved, which is what makes it a tough decision. And what I find interesting is that the decision to go for it on 4th and 1 ends up being one of two things. It's either creative, bold, and daring, or it's stupid, it's unnecessary and reckless. All depending on if they get that 1 yard. And hey, maybe they do. In which case, how great it was that they had confidence in their team. But maybe they don't. And then it's, hey, don't you understand your offense's limits, your team's limits? What are you doing? In both cases, the outcome determined whether the approach was the right one, regardless of how little differentiated the two. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, how does this apply to my life? How many times have I metaphorically gone for it on 4th and 1, didn't succeed, whatever it was? Let's say, my first YouTube video, since we're here, and I walked away at that point. Like, imagine saying, I put this video out, I didn't get the right outcome, so this isn't for me. As far as I can see, it's the same thing as a coach failing on 4th down and saying, you know what? I'm never going for it on 4th again. I mean, it's that irrational. Because as counterintuitive as it seems, you can't judge the value of a pursuit on one outcome. Sometimes you don't even need to change much, you just need to have the courage to show up again. And going back to YouTube, which I've talked about, before, the same thing has applied. It's like there are videos that I thought were great that are kind of buried on this channel, underperformed, and some I wasn't that excited about that did extremely well. I don't know why, but I do know that the approach was the exact same for both. No difference. They did, however, get different outcomes, different results, and I just think, imagine if I assumed my approach was flawed because of the ones that didn't meet or exceed expectations, right? That's why there's so much power in repetition. And yeah, like the coach on the side of the field, we're examining, we're adjusting, we're improving, but the point is, why be so quick to doubt ourselves and our ideas and our plans? Because I do think to walk away from something you believe in after one bad experience is like that coach saying, no, 4th downs are not for me. There's a saying attributed to Thomas Edison. He says, many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. How maybe it was a slight tweak, maybe it was a minimal change in perspective, or maybe it was just showing up one more time, picking up the axe and taking one more hack at the tree. And that's really it. The most important lessons we learn in life are simple. Simple to understand, but they elude us. And so let's remember that. Making our way into the world, how fine that line is between success and failure. How sometimes they look like one another, how the very thing needed to win, overcome, succeed, likes to disguise itself as failure and suggest that you try something else. When in reality, you could be right there knocking at the door. Of course they don't understand your vision. Of course it means nothing to them. It's how the world works. People need to see results, not ideas. They need to see to believe. In fact, everything you dream of, believe in, it needs to be carved into existence. And the important thing worth noting here is that it's not personal. It's not a reflection of you or your talent or your potential. The differentiator in life will always be one's ability to turn ideas into things. You have that power within yourself, literally to change the world as we know it. That's not a question. It's not even far-fetched. You're capable. But we need to spend less time feeling like we're owed something for that exhausted energy. The world is a tough place. It rewards value. And sometimes it takes way longer than we'd like to see a return on that investment. As James Clear mentions, you put an ice cube in a room at 0 degrees and you gradually turn up the temperature. You won't see it even begin to transform until you hit the 32-degree mark. That's not when the work began. It's not indicative of everything, but that's when the effects of the work become visible. And getting to that point is one of life's greatest challenges. It's hard to give everything for something you can't collect when you go to bed at night. It's hard to be that patient. The only way to break through the noise, to create something, is to fully, wholeheartedly believe in yourself. Believe in yourself to the extent that you can detach from the criticism. Detach from the facade of perfect lives on social media and the expectations you're immersed in. This isn't a race between you and the world. It's a battle of will between you and the voice that says there is no 32-degree marker. Removing that negativity, it's just as important as focusing on the positive. Dreams live at that intersection of belief and action, and I've always wondered what people think they're gaining by shouting about how important they are, the things they're doing, or their plans. That does nothing. You need to know what you're doing, and that's all. Words mean nothing. Ideas are empty. Respect is earned by adding actual value, by making a difference. So reallocate that energy into the gift you are giving to the people around you. That is a feat best accomplished with your mouth closed and your eyes open. Every day, every action unnoticed, effort unseen, it stacks up to create something that will truly change the world. I was having dinner not too long ago with a friend of mine. I see him as somewhat of a mentor as well. He's a bit older, has a couple decades on me as an entrepreneur, and we were talking about personal development, different ways to invest in yourself, what has the most ROI, kind of throwing ideas back and forth. And I started talking about different coaches I've linked up with, some of my observations on that. And he jumped right into this story. He says, Eddie, way back in the day, I paid a huge amount of money to spend the weekend with someone that I admired as an entrepreneur, as a business mind, with the intent to learn about him, his systems, his approach to his business and life, the whole thing. It was basically an investment into my journey. And he went on to say, I arrived for the weekend. Didn't take me long to feel completely underwhelmed, completely let down. Everything about the guy and his organization was sloppy. Nothing seemed to be methodical. Very little was extraordinary or groundbreaking. He said, I couldn't believe it, especially after tens of thousands of dollars spent, right? He spent a lot of money. Couldn't believe that someone he looked up to had so little to offer. And I'm sitting there just kind of like wide-eyed, like, oh man. And almost instinctively, I said, man, you must have been so angry. And he goes in this cheerful voice, no, I wasn't angry at all. This is a direct quote. He says, it was the best money I've ever spent in my life. I said, oh yeah, how? He says, it was that day I learned that, hey, if this clown can do it, if this guy can pull it off, what in the world is stopping me? What's my excuse? Basically said that day has been directly correlated to the success he's had since. Wow. Right, to which I responded, hey, thank you for the theme to what will become this Monday's YouTube video, right? Because the world needs to hear this message. So many of us need this. There's a tendency to put other people we don't know, people we know nothing about, right, on a pedestal and see ourselves as perpetual outsiders looking in. This notion that they have what I don't. When so often that thing they have is simply, even solely, self-belief. I know so many competent people that second-guess themselves out of starting or growth or progress. They see their inadequacies as substantially greater than their strengths. They don't go because they contemplate. They don't speak because they internalize. They don't create because they worry. And it's like, if you don't, someone else will. And that someone else could very easily be less suited for the job. But they did the thing that you wouldn't. The thing, as it turns out, that matters most. They trusted themselves to give it a shot. They understood that nothing starts until one looks in the mirror and believes in the pair of eyes staring back. And I look back and it just all makes perfect sense. You know, I think of the frustration in my parents' faces when I was a kid and would say, I can't do that. Right? It was the frustration of people who care deeply about me watching me get in my own way. Right? Yes, you can, Eddie. You are the one stopping you. You know, my grandfather saying everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time. No one is that special. And I think it's a critical reminder. It's not to say that success isn't warranted, that people who have done great things aren't qualified or talented or haven't earned it. No, not at all. The opposite, in fact. Time plus effort plus consistency tends to land people in pretty remarkable places. But it's like, no one takes that path or starts that journey unless they see themselves as worthy of it, until they give themselves permission. It makes you wonder how many people are simply too intimidated to lace up their shoes and walk out the front door. Don't even give it the thought. Hey, that's someone else's reality. I'm confined to this space right here. Think back to the early days of any incredible transformation. Right, I'm going to use a pretty cliche example, but I think it will do a great job of demonstrating my point. Think back to Michael Jordan playing JV basketball in high school his sophomore year because he didn't make the varsity team, okay? And at that point, if he was looking for evidence as to why he wasn't quite good enough, there it was. He could have easily found it. Not skilled enough, not quick enough, lacks vision. Certainly, as his coach pointed out, not tall enough, right? What in the world gave him the right, despite his circumstances, to think he was good enough to ultimately play at a high level? Who gave him permission to be that guy? He did. And it's just that. We don't see or think about any of that now. We see the NBA legend, the greatest ever, forgetting that at one point, he wasn't. And his life continuously consisted of crossroads where he had to bet on himself. Times where instead of accepting outcomes that weren't ideal, he sacrificed. He said, I do not accept that. He put in hours, which is a concept that we take for granted, right? People don't sacrifice unless they believe something will come from the blood, sweat, and tears. He believed that it would. You have to believe that it will as well. In fact, your life, if you started right now, made a little dot or mark on the present moment, then you could live 2 simultaneous existences at once. One track where you saw yourself as something extraordinary and sought to live that out, and the other track where the same you saw greatness as some intimidating, larger-than-life reality reserved for other people, the few. Right? You viewed yourself as an outsider, average, incapable, undeserving. The difference between where those tracks would end up would be worlds apart. Again, because humans follow through on who they believe themselves to be. We don't do things unless we believe they're possible. We don't sacrifice unless there's some sort of delayed gratification. We don't climb unless there exists a summit. What makes life both beautiful and mysterious is that we have to arrive at those outcomes before they exist. As Babe Ruth famously said in that article in the 1940s, it's hard to beat a person who never gives up. And it's hard to beat them because they believe themselves worthy of what they are chasing. So when will you? When will you find yourself worthy of that next level? When will you find yourself worthy of the financial success, the physique, the significant other, growth in your business? When will you let yourself be more or different or happy or whatever it is that seems just outside the scope of your reality? This world is built by people who understood what they wanted and granted themselves the freedom to pursue it. No superhuman strength required to place greater value on yourself. No record-breaking IQ necessary to live life on your terms, just a choice. Truly, a decision. And sure, it will be strange and awkward at first. You'll feel like an imposter in your own body at times. After all, getting what you've never had means doing what you've never done, but this is par for the course. This is life. And life cannot give you what you don't ask for. You can't arrive at a destination you're not traveling to. You can't be who you don't believe you're capable of becoming. So know that aforementioned reflection in the mirror has a depth to it that must be explored. And that what separates immobility from infinity is the understanding that, hey, if it's possible, then it is most definitely possible for me. Sometimes what we need most is not what we think we need most. It's not that break we've been waiting for the universe to provide, or the answer we've been desperately seeking. No, sometimes we need only 3 words. Don't give up. Don't turn back now. And see, I know you want to. And that the meaningful thing, the right thing, requires we give all of ourselves. It, metaphorically speaking, is the most expensive, exhausting, sometimes disheartening. But this is your reminder that there will come a point when you look back on this moment and the best thing you'll have ever done will have been continuing to put one foot in front of the other, continuing forward despite the circumstances, towards that which means something to you. I remember in South Florida, a handful of years ago, I'd just moved down here and was exploring the area a little bit, looking for a place to live, and I found this kind of odd little park in between a parking lot and the beach. And I pulled over, just started walking around, and ended up sitting down on this bench that faced the ocean and just looked out for a while. I remember looking at the people who all seemed so happy. They all seemed fulfilled, looked like they had it all together. I looked at the ocean that was so much bigger than me, so vast, so powerful. At the non-stop stream of planes flying overhead that all seemed to have a direction, a purpose. They had their courses mapped. And I think I remember it so vividly because I'd never felt more alone than at that moment. Like deeply, painfully alone. And it's not that I enjoy bringing up these types of experiences. I bring them up because time has revealed repeatedly that from these moments of doubt and sometimes even despair come what we need most. So long as we don't run from what the world is trying to provide us. It's as though we must experience emptiness before we can become fulfilled. We need to be overcome with this sensation that there's no way out before realizing that there is always a way, so long as we're willing to find it. And the pain associated with that willingness, well, it far outweighs the alternative. I often break things down into this dichotomy of the easy, meaningless way versus the hard, meaningful way. But that may be oversimplified, right? Easy compared to what? Hard compared to what? It's easy to shut down when we're at our lowest. It's easy to stop when it hurts. But easy now evolves into what's actually incredibly difficult tomorrow. A difficult, heart-wrenching, regretful forever. Admittedly, a controversial figure, but regardless, one of the most important quotes I've ever read was by Lance Armstrong in his book, It's Not About the Bike. He says, pain is temporary. It may last a minute, or an hour, or a day, or a year, but eventually it will subside, and something else will take its place. If I quit, however, it lasts forever. See, the easy thing versus the hard thing is too simplified, void of imperative context. The question is, in our darkest moments, will we stand up when it hurts so that we can walk, run, and ultimately sprint towards what matters? There's a realization that helped me. Because when we're in these situations, the thought goes like this. Things are wrong, things are broken, my life isn't what it should be. I need to fix this and make it whole, make it right, so I can live a good life like everyone else. Like, there's a deep loneliness associated with that misconception, as though the world is put together, but I am not. Well, let me dispel that notion and end that narrative. The world is a series of objects that mean nothing other than the value we place upon them. 7 billion people, all fighting their own battles, all trying to make sense of things, all pretending like the little fairy tale they've manufactured in their heads is the real thing or the right thing, when in actuality we are all just passengers along on a ride we do not understand. fighting battles that we don't often comprehend and cannot grasp. But you are not broken. You are human, perfectly imperfect, equipped with the tools to take another step forward despite the chaos and the uncertainty. Steps that become, in the end, everything. I remember reading about Jefferson, how he had migraines so severe while president that he would do most of his important work in the morning because of the high probability he could literally be incapacitated from noon on. And I just thought, man, we are all fighting battles. We're all doing what we can to make the most of our circumstance, to redirect discomfort into opportunity and pain into progress. And what's most incredible is that we can. There's a saying that it's not supposed to be easy. That getting where you need to go requires the treacherous path associated with a hero's journey, the vast unknowns, the questions that remain unanswered for extended periods of time, the villains that seemingly inject themselves into our lives. Please understand that this is not a reflection of you, who you are and your capabilities. This is the game of life. This is today's difficulty in exchange for tomorrow's meaning. The pressure that creates the diamonds, and you don't have to be sure of anything other than that you know you will continue stepping forward. Because you can. Things won't always go right, but in the failures are the new tools to grow and redirect. You won't always feel on top of the world, but it's in the valleys of despair that we're forced to truly analyze, to think deeply, reapproach. And perhaps most importantly, you may have days where you let yourself down, fall short, perhaps lose sight of the courage to which you have attached your dreams, but that's okay. You are defined not by your mistakes, but by the present moment. Not some impossible expectation of perfection, but by your ability to rise and rise again. When it requires all of you to lift your head up and carry on. So go into that unknown, where fear is transformed into courage and doubt to strength. Go. Because if not here, where? And if not now, when? Go. All you need, you have. And when life finds you sitting down on a park bench, staring out at a world that feels too big and too complex, that seems impossible to navigate, find it within yourself to smile. Smile because of what you've already overcome, what you've been through, who you are. Remember that you are exactly where you need to be, staring up at the meaning in life as opposed to down at your feet. Now go. No miracles here, no mountains need be jumped or oceans crossed, but if you, one, step forward, and two, believe in yourself to put the pieces together as they arrive, there is nothing you can't do or be. There is no obstacle before you that is insurmountable. Just keep going. And sure, sometimes that's all we can do. But it also happens to be true that it is your greatest superpower to simply find a way to run if you can, crawl if you must, but find a way. Because deep down in your soul, the pieces are there. And it will be, at some point, as you look back, the greatest decision you've ever made.